All right, welcome everyone. It is 6:03. We have quorum now, so we will go ahead and call our meeting to order. All right, welcome to the Casa Esperanza Board of Directors meeting for June 2nd, 2022. We will begin by having our conflict of interest statement read, followed by the school mission statement. Ms. Perry, please.
All right, good evening, everyone. Board members are reminded that it is our duty to avoid conflicts of interest and the appearance of conflicts of interest as we handle the work of this board. Does any member of the board know of any conflict of interest or any appearance of conflict with respect to any matters coming before us at this meeting? If so, please state them for the record. If during the course of the meeting you become aware of an actual or apparent conflict of interest, please bring the matter to the attention of the chair. It will then be your duty to abstain from participating in discussion on the matter and from voting on the matter. Mission statement. Casa Esperanza Montessori educates students using the Montessori philosophy and Spanish language acquisition in a way that develops independent, self-motivated individuals who possess the critical thinking skills necessary to become responsible global citizens.
Thank you, Ms. Perry. Next, we have our consent agenda. There are 2 edits to the agenda that are being presented to the board tonight from the one that was published. The first is removal of the approval of minutes, which we will be reserving for our standard regular meetings on the third Thursday. The other edit will be the update from media integrations, which will be under old business. Are there any other edits proposed for the agenda? Hearing none, is there a motion concerning the agenda as revised? Ms. Perry, Ms. Ward?
Looks fine to me.
Is that your motion to approve the agenda?
So moved. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Second, this is Monica.
All in favor? Aye, Monique.
I'm Monica.
Hi, Alice.
Any opposed? Thank you. Agenda is approved with those revisions. Next up, we have announcements. I want to take a moment on behalf of the board and leadership to acknowledge some of the messages that we've received from parents in the community regarding safety for the school. We certainly understand that is always a concern. It is always of extreme importance to the school leadership team. And again, we definitely understand why there is a heightened concern given recent news. And so what we'd like to do is allow our school leader, Ms. Connor, to also acknowledge that and respond generally to some of the questions about the school's position on safety. Ms. Connor? I think we're having some audio trouble.
Okay, I'll try one more time.
Oh, there you are. It's clear now.
Can you hear me?
It's a little sketchy.
I'm so sorry.
Okay, what we, let's see.
Can you hear me now, Ms. Taylor?
Oh, yes, that sounds clear.
Okay, perfect. So just to extend on what you've already said, Ms. Taylor, just wanted to take a minute to recognize and acknowledge the communications that have been shared with the board and with school leadership regarding school safety. One of the things that I think it's important to note is that we, as Ms. Taylor mentioned, we have had safety plans in place. Number one, because they're required by the State Department, but number two, because we have a commitment to the safety of our students and faculty at Casa. and making sure that we not only have plans, but that those plans are clearly explained and clearly defined to all faculty members. One of the things that we immediately after learning of the news, the leadership team went into a planning meeting to discuss possible ways that we could improve the overall safety, one of which is just making sure that secure entrances remain secure and that we're protecting locked doors, not propping doors, reminding students not to open doors for adults, even if it's adults that they know. I had a meeting with the faculty again, the full faculty yesterday, where we discussed this in more detail. Of course, I could not go into the school's safety plan. That would be put the school at risk if I went into the details of the plan and the specifics of the things that we're doing. But what I can say, hopefully to provide some level of comfort and peace of mind to our families, is that we, not just for our current facility, but for the new facility as well, have revisited the safety plans that we have in place, and we'll be engaging. We've actually already engaged with local law enforcement so that they can come out and give us feedback on our existing plans, as well as some of the future plans we have for the new facility. And when we return in the fall, the other thing is just more of an awareness for any temporary staff at Casa. That's one of the areas of opportunity the leadership team discussed, is that when we have someone who's coming in as a guest teacher or substitute, or if we have a guest speaker on campus, that we need to make sure that those individuals, whether they're going to be at Casa for one day, a couple of hours, or if they're serving in a substitute position for a few days, that we take the time to make them aware of what those safety policies are. That's an area, again, of opportunity, and just something that, we as school leadership just want to be more mindful of. We don't want anyone who is at Casa as a visitor or as a guest, or if they're serving in a position of support for Casa, to find themselves unaware of what those plans are, whether it's as simple as a fire drill, if there is an active shooter and safety plan, those individuals need to be aware. One of the things that I, as a school leader, have decided will also be an important part of that is to educate our community a little more. If we have visitors coming in, there are things, we would want as a visitor for an extended period, that our visitors also understand safety. So just trying to incorporate some of those practices as we train substitutes. We already share the safety plans with our substitutes, but just revisiting those things and not taking for granted that, our substitute list shifts frequently, and we have visitors coming into the building fairly regularly, and we need to make them more aware of what those expectations are around student and faculty safety. Also, I just want to extend to the community that, as with most things, I am certainly open to feedback and suggestions. Just know, though, that the measures we need to take have been taken. The plans that need to be in place are in place, but there's always, room for improvement and opportunity for just, I don't think you can ever be too safe. And I feel like the leadership team has made a commitment to just ongoing review of our plans and policies, and just making sure that we're giving the attention to this, not just in times of heightened concern or uncertainty, but that it becomes regular practice for us at Casa.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Ms. Connor.
You're welcome.
Excuse me. Next, for new business, we begin by discussing bond financing and our maximum annual debt service. I'd actually like to ask the board, just for a change in the order of them, would you all like to invite media integrations to provide an update before we dive into? We've got a number of financial business items to discuss, and we can certainly allow Mr. Beatty to go first, if that's okay with you all, Ms. Perry, Ms. Ward.
I'd be good with that. Thank you.
Works for me.
Okay. Hello, Mr. Beatty. How are you?
I'm doing very well, thank you. And thank you to the board and also for Senora Connor for inviting me here tonight. I wanted to just take a quick minute, and I want to absolutely respect your time. And so I've put together a small presentation deck that I'd like to share with you, just as very much an overview of the things that we've been involved with Casa since just after the first of the year. We've been very appreciative of the opportunity to work with Casa. It's been a great opportunity, and we're very pleased with the work we've been able to do so far, and we feel like we're making some very good progress. This is where I confess that if I could possibly screen share.
Yes, it should be an option for you.
Okay. This is where I confess that I'm not always good at this sort of thing. I'm kind of constantly
You got it. There you go.
used by my staff for this reason, but I will do my best. So hopefully you can see the large screen, and I think I'll just leave the slideshow up there so that I don't risk any further embarrassment. I'll just fly through some things very quickly with you this evening, and I'm also very happy to follow up with answers to any questions you may have, and I can certainly provide you with more information beyond that. This is just kind of a quick overview. We have reams of numbers I could share with you, but among the highlights, we were brought in primarily to make sure that the enrollment for the coming school year was where it needed to be, and we're very pleased with where things are pacing so far. A couple of highlights: we wound up with, as of the date of early enrollment, the lottery selection, we had 451 applicants in the queue for 161 slots. In the first 4 weeks of our engagement with Casa, we were able to bring in 199 new people, and so we feel like that's not that all of that was us, but we feel like that was a pretty good indication of some of the effectiveness that we were able to provide. Another thing that we've been very focused on is, what's happening on an ongoing basis. And, we're very pleased to report that even in the last 2 weeks, for example, we've added 15 more people to the wait list. And so, one of the things that Senora Connor and we have been talking about on a pretty extensive basis is just making sure that we keep that wait list in a robust position. And so, that certainly is the reason for us to continue to stay very active in our marketing activities. I can tell you, I just pulled some numbers before we started tonight. I can tell you that as an example, right now we have 251 people on the wait list, and 90 of them are enrichment candidates, which we know that's the place where we really need to keep focused on. And so again, we feel good about where we're headed in that respect. Our primary focus has been Facebook advertising. It's proven to be very effective for us with other schools that we've worked with. We tend to do a combination of different types of creative. We ordinarily will start our campaigns with static badges, with attributes of the school and calls to action. We then generally migrate into more animated materials, animated slideshows that generally will last about between 50 seconds and maybe a minute and 20 seconds that usually will focus on one specific subject. And we've also done quite a bit of video advertising as well. And so those combinations of creative tend to keep things fresh, keep viewers engaged, and tend to keep our click-through rates moving in a direction that we want them in. We also obviously keep a very close eye on the campaigns. We're updating content on a pretty regular basis, generally about every 2 to 3 weeks. More quickly if we sense that we're seeing some erosion in some of our click-through rates or some of our other metrics. At the very beginning, our focus was on 4 different sub-campaigns, 2 of them in English, 2 in Spanish. 2 of them focused on dual language, 2 of them focused on Montessori, and that was driven from the focus group discovery meeting that we did at the very beginning of our engagement, where we sat down and talked to over a dozen folks who were representatives of the administration, our teachers, and our parents. And we used that guidance to really, drive our messaging throughout the entire process of our campaigns. Our advertising was and continues to be geographically centered. We kind of split the difference between our new location and our old location. And then in March, we added a second layer of advertising, which is much more focused on enrichment, much more focused on the new building, and we placed that right on top of the new location. And so the thought there is that we were sort of creating kind of a hyper targeted campaign that will reach people who may be driving by the building every day and wonder what the heck is going on there. Our immersion numbers are rock solid, and so in discussions with Senor Connor and with Ms. Coble, we decided to pause our Spanish language advertising in early April. Just some quick numbers for you here. We've reached over 132,000 people, nearly by now over 750,000 times. And so one of the other things that we do in our campaigns is keep a close eye on the frequency. We want to make sure that people are seeing our messages with some consistency. We also want to make sure that at some point we don't want to invite fatigue. And so that's a reason for constantly changing things up. We've found through our last few years with Casa and with other schools that, the Facebook advertising campaign, because it's so precise and laser focused, does a good job of driving people to the website. And so we've been very pleased to report that we've had over 5,000 people come to the website as a result of our advertising. The other thing that we did in early March, this is something that we've done in a few other schools as well with some success, is we also added a secondary Google AdWords campaign that focuses on our school, on some of our comparable schools, and general terms that we know people will use in a search, which could be charter school near me, private school near me, high rated school near me. And we found that that's been a very effective sort of ancillary tool that's worked very well for us. And as I note here, in just over 2 months, we've been able to bring just about 600 people to the website at a cost of $600. It's tempting to say, well, let's do more of that, but you're kind of at the mercy of how many people are searching for those terms. But we found that that's been a very, very effective secondary tool for us as well. We continue to update our creative. We recently were in school also putting together a series of videos that we shared with Senora Connor to distribute to our new applicants in the various grade levels, where we had teachers greeting new parents, welcoming them into the classrooms and talking about the powerful attributes of our school. And so we've been very pleased with that response. We also, about a week ago, launched a new ad for the continuing progress of our construction as well. And we placed that in the location of the campaign that's focused, more directly on Wake Forest. We also, in the last week, at Ms. Cobble's request, we also put out another campaign that is focusing on applicants for teaching positions, and we talked about that late last week. We had the campaign up first thing Tuesday morning, and that campaign has already generated 73 clicks. And so again, we feel like we've been very responsive, try to move quickly and try to address the needs of what we're trying to accomplish with Casa, whether it's with recruiting teachers or with recruiting students. I want to just talk very quickly about some of the other things that we've been involved with since we started working with Casa. If you go back to our early part of our engagement, we were involved with helping to get the new website up and running. We spent a lot of time, our team member who does a lot of our translations wound up translating the entire site. And we also had some extensive conversations with Ms. Outlaw and with Elena to get the site up and ready to go. We continue to update the website on a regular basis. We've built out a dedicated new construction page, and we're adding video content to that and keeping people up to date on our progress there. A couple of weeks ago, we were asked to put together a small Facebook boost to alert new parents about some activities that were taking place, and we followed up that meeting by creating what we're calling a new parents resource hub on the website. And so, with the help of Senora Connor and Ms. Cobble, we'll continue to add more materials to that. So the concept there being that anytime a new parent wants to make sure they have all of the various forms and documents and information they need, they can just go right to that page. In our conversation last week, we've decided to start working on a new fall prep page as well, where we can start to, put materials in place for people to go to throughout the summer as we get closer to the new school year. And so again, we're always inclined to jump in and assist with managing the website materials as much as possible. We've also taken a much stronger role in social media as well. We have weekly meetings with Ms. Cook to find out what's going on at school. She's proven to be very helpful for us in keeping us up to date on, events of interest that, and as we note here, our social media posts tend to fall into 4 different categories. Some are keyed on recruitment, focusing on attributes of the school and encouraging people to click and apply or learn more. We also are very focused on updating Facebook posts for new parent meetings and activities. Obviously, if there are things like literacy night that are happening, we want to be able to not only tease them in advance, but do follow-ups as well. And also on occasion, we're doing employment opportunity posts as well. So again, working very closely with team members to dramatically increase the frequency of and the variety of messaging on social media. When you might recall that when we first talked back in I guess January, that was one of our concerns, was that the overall social media activity level at the school just was not as robust as it could be. We've just seen in other schools that if you can really start to engage, it makes a huge difference in helping parents and other stakeholders and older students, feel like they're in touch with what's going on at the school. We're also starting to build out the YouTube presence as well, which is another part of social media that was rather inert, a few months ago.
Bob,
Yes.
I'm sorry, can I ask you just to kind of give us highlights? We have to
Yes,
start to wrap up this segment, and then this is excellent stuff, excellent updates and information.
okay.
So if you could also, share your highlights here,
Yes.
but then if you'd like to share this presentation, with the board, we'd love to.
I would be happy to do that. I led with my A material, Ms. Taylor, so the rest of this is pretty boring stuff anyway. So
No, it's all encouraging. I appreciate
It's all
it.
very good. Yeah.
thank you. I will just note very quickly that we've done a lot of work with the database, which is giving us the ability to get information out to the entire group of stakeholders, if you will, but also we can send things out to discrete subsets. We've had a lot of feedback from our construction updates that we're trying to send out every 2 to 3 weeks. And again, overall, we also have weekly scheduled meetings with Senora Connor and Ms. Cobble, which have proven to be very, very helpful for us. And we have a lot of plans for things we want to be able to do in the summer and beyond. And so I will conclude with that note, and I will make this deck available, and I'll certainly be happy to answer any follow-up questions or entertain any other comments or feedback that the board might have at your convenience as well.
Thank you so much. It really is encouraging and exciting.
And impressive. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. We've noted the differences as well and the variety. So really appreciate your work. I know you're doing so much behind the scenes.
Well, I'll just, if I can steal 20 more seconds just to say it's been a pleasure to work with Casa. I know we had, some adventures in terms of who we were reporting to there for a little while, but, we've just kept our head down and kept working, and it's been a real pleasure to work not only with Senora Connor and with Ms. Cobble, who have been our primary focus, and now Ms. Cook as well. But just the support that we've gotten when we've been in the building has just been really gratifying as well. So I want to just thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming tonight
Thank you.
also.
My pleasure.
All right, that was invigorating.
Yes,
Our
awesome.
energy levels are up so that now we can talk about bond financing.
How
and-
exciting is that?
I will turn it over to you, Alice.
Okay, so I think the next thing is this MADS issue, right?
Yes.
All right, let me see if I can share. Yeah, here we go. So are you seeing a slide that says what's the MADS issue?
Yes.
Okay. So I just threw this together to hopefully to make it easier to communicate this, but this all kind of surfaced when Shanika and Nigel were going back and forth on the budget, and I was trailing behind them reading emails. And I noted that at one point in one of the budget versions, they were testing the next year's budget to see if we were compliant with our debt coverage ratio. And at that one version, which is different than the version we have now, was compliant with, or was, we were in good shape with respect to coverage ratio for our current year debt payments, or the budget year debt payments, but not for the maximum annual debt payments. And Nigel said, well, we're going to have to either get some forgiveness there or look for more budget funds. And when I read that, I'm like, whoa, I don't ever remember us in all the many documents traded committing to debt coverage on the maximum annual debt payment. So as this slide said, you've probably figured this all out by now. There's, the bond payments are not, or the debt principal and interest payments are not level through the whole 35 years that we are in debt. And I mean, Truist kind of laid this out where it ramps up as the school grows, and then it kind of levels off. And eventually some of the bonds start to retire and it starts to drop down a little bit, but that's far, far away. But I've shown there that, for 22-23, our debt payments are $1,000,027. But if you go out another 15, 16 years, they go up to as much as 1.276 million. So I said, I don't think we have to worry about the maximum annual debt service coverage. And I pulled up the term sheet that we had all reviewed many, many months ago. And it did not specify anything about a coverage ratio for a maximum annual debt. I shared that with Nigel and said, why are we worried about maximum annual debt service? Because I don't think we have any commitment related to that. So at this point in the budget process, we had several questions that Nigel thought we needed to bounce off of Eismiller. So he volunteered to send the note to Eismiller. We bounced those questions off of them. And then he also mentioned this, provided the term sheet and said, I don't believe the school has a commitment for debt coverage on maximum annual debt service. And then there was kind of radio silence from Eismiller. And then we did eventually get kind of we're looking at this response from Ben Keto. And then I think you guys may all have been copied on the note that came on Monday evening from actually one of the founders of Eismiller, saying that they had apparently made a drafting error and that many of the bond documents, including many of the bond documents, had referenced a maximum annual debt service coverage requirement, but the term sheet did not. So, and he was never quite that clear, but that's the essence of the issue. So they have redrafted those documents to take out that commitment so that all the documents are aligned with the term sheet. And we do not have any kind of debt service coverage requirement for maximum annual debt service, just for the fiscal year in question coverage. So he now is saying, the Eismiller guys are now saying that we need to to go through an approval process and re-sign and sign those modified documents. I think the documents are probably fine. This is their error. They're very coy in calling it a drafting error, but really they did just plain not align what they wrote with the term sheet. I'm suspecting they pulled up a prior school bond issue they did that actually had that commitment and never caught that we didn't have the same commitment. So this is kind of all on them, but I would recommend that what we do, I mean, Nigel thinks the new document's fine. I would recommend that we run it by Mary Nash. And if she has no concerns, that we just move ahead approving the new documents. And we probably do need to get this done by the end of June because because we have some reporting requirements based on end of fiscal year information that it would be good to have this all resolved before that. So that's kind of was a long and maybe too complex explanation. Any questions?
No questions on my part. I mean, I certainly appreciate your thoroughness and attention to detail with this matter. And I'm glad you caught this and noted that there was, a discrepancy. So thank you for.
Yeah, I was kind of surprised when I saw it. Wait a minute. I don't think we ever committed to that,
Right.
So.
Well, these are, favorable circumstances, right?
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
I mean, really, we're kind of innocent. Here, we just have to go through the process supporting the correction of these documents.
Okay.
So based upon your recommendation, I'm assuming we just need to make a motion if we agree to have Mary Nash review the revised or redrafted documents, and then based upon her review that the board will come back and vote on those revised documents for approval.
Yeah, I think that would be fine. It may be safe to go ahead and vote for approval subject to a clean review from Mary Nash, even if we want to try to drive some conclusion tonight.
I'm fine with that. Monique?
I'd be comfortable with that. There's really nothing new here. We're clarifying part of the many documents that we've reviewed before. So with Mary Nash's review, I would be comfortable executing. Was that your
So I can make a motion that based upon your recommendation, Alice, that we have Mary Nash review the redrafted documents, and based upon her review, if all is in order, the board can vote and approve the documents as warranted or as approved, I
modified
guess, as modified, yeah.
by Ice Miller. Okay,
Okay.
I will second that. I guess it's just us, huh?
all in favor? Aye.
Hi, Monica.
Alice.
Any opposed?
Oh, sorry.
No, thank you very much for that, Alice.
No worries.
You are also going to present the draft for our 22-23 budget.
Yes. Okay. So I'm going to share again. And by way of introduction, there has been scurrying the last several weeks on this budget, and I want to first commend Shanika and Nigel and Ms. Connor for really digging through the details And then I was kind of on the sidelines, and then Shanika and I reviewed it, and there was a couple gaps that we were able to clear up. And we now are in a really good position. I think I'm very confident with where we are. And just so everyone knows, Shanika is on vacation at the beach this week. Otherwise, she would be here doing this. But so I'm sharing the Excel sheet that was in the board folder. There is also a PDF of it in case somebody had trouble opening this Google sheet. But I'll just kind of, I think the way I want to go through this is to just go through some of the differences from last year to this year. And if there's any questions, just chime in. And then we will, at the end, kind of look at the overall situation for next year. And I would say because of this debt service coverage there, we were in some of the early versions pretty tight. And we did some, well, I should not include myself in that. Shanika and Ms. Connor did some pretty serious surgery on some lines to skinny them down because we were concerned about meeting the debt service coverage, and we were concerned about some of the issues with paying our old facility rent and getting that reimbursed and how that would affect the coverage ratios. We were able, honestly, just yesterday and today to work through that and found out that there's actually some new governmental accounting principles for how leases are recorded that make that a lot less worrisome than it was. So I think now what you're going to see here is a budget that has some room to grow on the expense side. But you all have been through this trip with me for more than a few years. So we always tend to start pretty tight. And then as we see various assumptions firm up, we modify our spending to use the money effectively. So, we will get an ADM number, we'll get a state reimbursement number and local reimbursement numbers. And as those become clearer, we will use new funds that appear out of that to grow some of the line items that maybe we have tightened our belt a bit too much. So bearing that in mind, I'm not sure, Ms. Connor, I was going to try to ping you today and I never got around to it, but what is our best guess ADM for next year? Is this close?
Alice, she
had to drop.
Yeah, she had to drop. We lost her.
Well, I need to check this, but I think it's fairly similar to, I know last year we were paid on 648, although we did not have 648 students. The state did, because of COVID, they did that. They made that announcement and decision that they would pay on what you estimated before the school year started, and they never trued it up to your real student count. So I think we're pretty close to level year to year from a student count point of view for revenue purposes. Shanika, in consultation with Nigel and CSP, has assumed a 1.5% increase in the per student allotment for both the state and the local. And then on the federal side, she's dropped down the revenue because a lot of the ESSER funds that we have had for the past couple of years are going away. On the other revenue side, probably the biggest change is this technology fee that we had charged in the past. And the state guidelines are that a charter school can charge a fee like this if their local educational authority, AKA the public schools, charge one. Wake County quit charging theirs and used COVID funds to cover this technology fee that they had charged in prior years. So we were forced to eliminate that this year. And then this is one of these weird line items that is where we are pulling in as revenue from in 2020, 22, 23, some money that we anticipate spending to buy some of our furniture and equipment for the new building. And this is the amount, our estimate of the amount of money that we have received. Trying to think how to explain this eloquently. So you recall that we spend a lot of money, Casa spent a fair amount of money during the process of planning the new building that was reimbursable once the bonds were issued. And I think we received about $650,000 of reimbursement. We were not able, well, yes, we did receive 650. That's what this number is. We're not able to spend all that in the current fiscal year. So we expect 261 to be spent next year. And that's what this number is. When we get down to coverage ratio calculations, you'll see this comes out because this would not be considered a revenue in the modified accrual basis, which is how the coverage ratio is calculated. We will be preparing, or I think Shanika has it, but we haven't spent a lot of time on it yet. We will have a separate budget for the before after school program because she is, I think, rightfully wanting to make sure that we have a good handle on the cost of that program and that it's making sure that it's profitable to the school. We would love to have possibly done the same for preschool, but because the students are embedded in the classrooms with charter students, it's much harder to discreetly identify expenses that are related to preschool. And hence we are just keeping that as part of our core budget. So the net of all this is that our revenues are pretty close to flat, down just a touch. And I think we very much suspect that there will be federal money or other state money that will come up, especially with the recent articles and news about the impact of COVID on student progress. So I think this is the best number we have now, but I fully expect that it will change. Salaries, we use the salary policies that we've established several years ago and the benefit programs that we've had. This will be our first year of no contributions to the state pension plan. So you can see that brings us a little bit of breathing room. But we have a lot more people we're budgeting this year because of the new school and new classroom, more classrooms, more teachers. So that's what salaries looks like. Instructional supplies and things is really not a big line item. We expect to spend quite a bit of this. You can see that we have a pretty good number in the current year, 21, 22, and a lot of things are being ordered, and we're trying to pull as much of this cost into the current year that ends on June 30, so that we are set for the new school year, and we have don't have to spend that money next year when things are a little tighter. So I'm just going to keep cruising. Computer expenses. We bought quite a few computers last year, and we were able to meet the needs of the new students and the new building with some of the things that we bought in the current fiscal year. So this is a pretty small number. I think it's important to note that we will need to ramp this number up in future years because Shanika and I've talked about kind of levelizing our replacement of our Chromebooks and our faculty computers so that we don't have some of you will remember years when we had to buy a whole bunch at once because we just were short. And if we buy, say a fourth of the fleet every year and keep that as a level expense, it will probably benefit us. So we would expect to start looking at that maybe late next year and do some of that if things loosen up here. So kind of bare bones with an anticipation of possibly doing more. Professional development is pretty much aligned with our spend patterns. Historically, we tend to not always spend as much as we've allocated. I think that's mostly a time problem, honestly.
I was gonna say, wouldn't we, I thought we were kind of moving more, I don't think aggressively is the word, but wanting to make sure that that was well spent and
Yeah. And I think Shanika's thinking is that, and if Miss Connor were here, I'm sure she could add some color, but they discussed it and we just are not, she said, we're just not seeing the usage at the rate that we have budgeted for several years now. Again, this is something that I would say this is one technology, this and a couple other spaces are places where we would probably want to add funds as we get more data about some of how good our assumptions are. Contracted student services is really a hard one to predict because it depends upon the needs of your student population. So I think this is honestly a educated guess from Ms. Connor and Shanika. And again, we will do what we have to do to abide by the law and meet the needs of our students. The before after school care expense dollars are not shown here because they'll be in the other budget. Office and advertising and marketing expenses, we've been pretty lean on that as well. I think this might be an area where we will learn in the new building. We would want to may need to increase a little bit. We also Shanika is doing a good job of like loading up on office supplies and things as we start into the year using some of our current year funds since we're in very good shape this year. Pretty similar story around copying, which is flat. Okay, lease, this is where it gets pretty tricky. So Shanika did some math on our electric bill where we are and what it might be. Our new building will have programmable thermostats. Well, actually, I think they've implemented that even in the old building. And she saw a significant drop when the programmable thermostats were put in. So she is confident based on her experiences at her prior charter school, plus using these programmable thermostats so that we're not cooling. Like in the current building, she said they're getting ready to shut down or minimize the cooling levels in all but the office area, since the rest and the programmable thermostats allow them to do that. So they can, so she's comfortable, we will save, we will be fine with this, even with multiple locations for part of next year. On the rent side, this is where it really got where I think we spent more hours on this line item than almost the whole rest of them. But so what we're trying to do is make an educated guess and about how we will end up resolving the current lease and minimize the impact of that on next year's budget. So we are going to pay actually 2 months in advance in the course of the June 30, the school year ending June 30. So that will so what this 193 is 4 more payments that will take us from through December 31st. So that will, between the prepaids and this, we have budgeted for 6 months of rent in the current space. The remaining, at the finance committee, we talked about then assuming that January through June would be reimbursed to us from bond proceeds. And so what we did to reflect that here is align with our auditors and to be able to preserve our debt service coverage ratio, is we did not include the second 6 months of rent in the budget because it would be a net zero impact. We would pay that out and then immediately file for reimbursement from the bond fund. And we would treat that as a extraordinary item. And our auditors have said that they believe that would be an acceptable treatment. And so it will not jeopardize the coverage ratio. So to make this budget realistic, we only put in the 6 months. The other line item here, row 108, payment to UMB. This is the money that we pay every month to, we pay it to UMB, but we pay it on behalf, I mean, we're essentially renting the building, the new building from the holding company. So this is our rent that is then collected by UMB and eventually paid out in the form of principal and interest to the bondholders. And we have confirmation of that number from UMB. And then the vision rental is the temporary space for MG. So I'm going to pause there. Did that make any sense? Because I know it's tricky to, it's hard to explain.
Honestly, I'm not clear on the auditor's recommendations for how the note there about accounting treatment for leases. I mean, I get that overall we're covered on it, right?
Right. So yeah, maybe this is confusing, but this last sentence may be able to delete this entire cost. There is a new government accounting standard that Amanda from TJT told us they would be implementing when they draft our year-end financials this year. And it is a very not intuitive way of accounting for leases, in my opinion, or showing them on your financials. Once we see exactly how that is done on June 30, we may be able to even take out this 193 from the budget. But the conservative thing to do now is to keep it in here so that if that lease accounting doesn't quite work like we expect, we aren't up a creek. They're really moving the lease and the related liability to the balance sheet and not running it through your income statement, which is helpful to us from a coverage point of view. But I think it is confusing in the sense that from a cash management and a cash flow and operational point of view, the way we manage our finances from month to month through the year, it kind of makes it difficult to see the impact of leases.
Okay. Can I ask a general
Of course.
question? So in looking at the comparisons, for the 21-22 revised, none of that includes the new facility, obviously, right? So we haven't projected those numbers based on students and staff next year. That's only the proposed one that we're looking at.
Well, I'm sorry, I should have made this clear at the beginning. Columns A and B are the current year 21-22
Right.
most recent budget revision. And then column D and E is the proposed budget for next year.
So I have a question, back to electricity and gas.
Yep.
So in all the financial reviews that I'm doing right now, pretty much fuel, gas, we're seeing that that's skyrocketing. Don't foresee that's going to be changing anytime soon. So the fact that it's 25,000 was 25,000 and now still 25,000, are we not budgeting and anticipating that it's going to be more?
Right. That's kind of my question. Like if we're looking at current state versus when we're in the new building, I feel like some of these, not just in the property section, that
Right.
maybe we're lowballing some of this.
This is where in meeting with Shanika, she had done a certain level of due diligence.
Sure.
So for her response to the gas would be the 25,000 in the current year is the constant refilling of the propane tank. We will not have a propane tank at the new building. And as a matter of fact, I'm not even sure we have any gas service at the new building. And she wasn't either, but she feels pretty confident that based on her experiences and the recent implementation in the current site of the programmable thermostats, that will allow for more central control of what areas you cool when and how you can manage things from a timer point of view, that if you take them together, 75,000 versus 85,000 is a reasonable estimate. And I don't completely disagree with you, but I think she's very, I think she's done some due diligence. I don't want to misrepresent her at all. I think she felt very comfortable with this.
No, I'm positive, that she does her due diligence. I think
Mhm.
just would be,
I think
we're
it's
just
a
missing her.
risk area we need to
Yeah.
keep an eye on. Just
Yeah,
yeah.
we can, I mean, because she does so much behind the scenes, like with
Yeah.
Michael, during our weekly Tuesday meetings, we can run that by her.
Yeah.
I do have a question going back to the Chromebooks.
Yes.
If I am not mistaken, we got those in, some were issued in 2019.
Mhm.
And I know that, of course, a lot more were issued in 2020 with us going virtual, if I'm not mistaken. So I just Googled, because I don't know, the average age of a Chromebook. They were saying like 8 years, but the average age of a Chromebook in a school is half of that, 4 years.
Right.
So 4 years would be, as we're approaching, going into the 2023.
Like the 23-24 school year.
Yeah. So with that being said, we purchased all new Chromebooks in 2019. So I know that you were saying that, the goal was not to have to purchase all new again.
Right.
So I don't know if.
Well,
and I don't know if we need to do I don't know if there's a way that IT can do an assessment on the current condition of our Chromebooks, compared to You know, I'm assuming because we were virtual, probably using them more, I guess, than typical school, because of the 2021, I guess, school year. You understand what I'm saying? I guess.
Yeah, I do. And this is something that she and I talked about, because, and I kind of said to her, I want for us next year to, you know, take a good inventory. A couple of things, Monica. One is, I think we bought a fair number in 21, 22 as well with COVID funds. So, and some of those have basically just sat in inventory. So even though they may be a year old, they are not banged up yet.
Gotcha. Okay.
And some of those, and they have been able to, for if a machine really does have an issue that's either unrepairable or it's bang, or it needs to be replaced, they've just been able to replace out of inventory. What I asked Shanika to keep in mind was that, you know, maybe by December of calendar year 22, that we kind of build our plan for the next several years.
Okay.
So that we could levelize the spend as much as possible. And get that smoothed out and get a plan that we can kind of maintain over years. So again, we don't have these big bump ups.
And I guess the last thing, in light of, you know, what Ms. Connor was saying at the beginning of the meeting, the safety meetings that they have had, you know, I know that they've been working diligently. You guys have been working on this review and preparation of the budget. But in light of some of the, you know, probably more recent conversations, meetings that they've had over the last week and a half, if there, you know, are some recommendations over and beyond what is already in place, I'm just wondering if there is anything that we need to incorporate. I know with the new building, obviously a lot is going to be taken care of, but you know, from the existing building, the vision locate, you know, the middle grade location, I'm just wondering if there's anything that needs to be considered as far as safety equipment or anything along those lines that may have come up in conversation, but may not have gotten added to the budget based upon, you know, the meetings that they just had, if that makes sense.
I agree with you. And I would candidly say that probably is not in this budget because of just the timing. Because Shanika was trying to wrap this up, you know, before her vacation. So, and that kind of, those things were coming to a head in parallel. I would, one thing that I will pass on to Shanika is that we probably should think about making an initial assessment of what we might need. And if there are costs associated with it, maybe getting it on the wish list for the construction work. And you two would know better than I, but you know, if there's a chance that we can slide in any additional investments in the name of security into the capital and get the bond money to pay for it, that's a great thing.
Yeah, so I think like Monica was referring to in the new facility, I think that's been covered adequately. Not, I mean, like Ms. Conner said, you can never be too safe, but I do know we've had multiple discussions and meetings and planning about, you know, even before recent events. I feel confident that those things have been included, and anything else that might come up, as you mentioned, Alice, yes, would fall under you know, if there's any change orders or something like that, the bond funds. I think just having more of a kitty fund, if you will,
Mhm.
to respond, like Monica was saying, to just some of those things in the interim for that
Yeah.
first quarter of the year where they might want to make some changes. Because I know Ms. Connor has already said that, you know, she has some additional measures that they're going to be addressing once this year closes out. So,
Okay, well, let me just pass that on to Shanika. And again, this has changed a bit even since she's seen it. So there is a little more money available, and we could easily cover a few more. We could set aside a little more of a reserve fund or a little bit of a cushion
well, I
in
think
our building expenses to make sure that we have funding for that.
we've been working with quite a strong surplus so far, though,
Yes,
right?
yes. And she
So-
can, well, she has to be able to spend it by June 30. So that's the trick. Do we know what it is and what we would buy?
Gotcha.
But that's, I mean, that's certainly possible. I would hope that, I know Shanika is very focused on spending money that we can this year. So
Mhm.
I'm suspecting that she and Ms. Connor have not synced up with respect to the anything that Ms. Connor might want to spend in that particular space just because of timing.
I suspect it's already on, I know it's already on their radars, and maybe
Yeah,
some, estimate is probably on their desk.
could be.
I think even if we cannot receive those items, we can just double back and spend the money, you know, for what
Yes.
they're planning to do.
Right.
So I think, I mean, that sounds good. And then I think just in general, if we could just talk through some of the revisions, particularly where we've reduced things, like certain things I totally understand because it's a brand new building. So a lot of things have been taken care of for next year. But things like utilities, I would just like to have a follow-up discussion to better understand our confidence in dropping utilities in a time like this. And then
Sure. Yeah, I'm probably don't have I cannot represent Shanika well in that regard. I know she was confident, but I can't explain all the details.
Oh, sure, I get it. I mean, I think you're doing fine. I think it's just good for us to.
No, I think that's
Perfect.
totally fine. And I know she'd be happy to do that.
Not to create more unnecessary detail, but for example, under building maintenance and repair,
Mhm.
it's relatively insignificant, but I see the comment of combining the two line items, repairs with maintenance supplies, because it's a new building. I don't feel super strongly about this, but I do, if it's possible, I would like to see us leave those as separate line items because repair and maintenance are different, right? And I think it would be helpful for us to look at how much each of those line items varies once we change facilities. I think if we put them all into one, then we have to do the work of detangling it when we want to know what we used to.
Yeah, I think that's a fair observation. Now, one thing she might be saying here is the line items for recording actuals can be separate, but she's combined the budgets.
Okay.
So I don't know. I don't know if she was anticipating that, but the fact that she didn't just blow the line item away makes me think she's going to continue to code the invoices into those two categories separately.
Gotcha. That would be good. Okay.
Yeah.
And since we're on the building maintenance, am I missing it as far as the actual building maintenance personnel?
Well,
But
that's there is
up there in the
they're in the salaries.
salary.
I
Okay.
did check that.
Okay.
So one other thing, I mean, it's not going to change the value really, but kind of gets into our next agenda item, but it's relevant. So we might want to go ahead and keep all of the administrative contracts in salaries, because there's some information that we should consider from Donna as to the difference between contract employee versus independent contractor. And so I mean, I think it just might be.
So you're saying this item,
Yeah,
right? Okay. We may want to keep it up in the salary space.
correct.
Okay. I'm making a note.
And I know that, you know, Shanika has prior experience, you know, transitioning from, you know, an existing building to a new building, but there's always those unanticipated costs. So I don't know if there's anything that she either recalls, if we've, you know, run this by Michael Caney, but there, you know, there's always something that comes up. So I don't know if that was something that came up in discussion. Have we thought about this? Have we thought about this? Have we thought about this type of, you know, scenario?
Yeah, if you scroll down, Alice, under miscellaneous, is undocumented expense just like an operating contingency?
Where did you see undocumented expense?
So under fundraising and special events,
Oh,
miscellaneous, and then it's the 7424.
yes, that's a contingency.
Okay.
Should that be increased compared to previous year? It's the exact same amount, right? Am I looking at that right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it looks like it. We could honestly, since we really just got worked out how we can meet the debt coverage this today, I think we will. I think we could go back and provide more contingency or more, maybe I would call it cushion in several line items. But until I know that Shanika was very focused on trying to pull this together, making sure that we would meet the debt coverage.
Sure.
So, we were playing tag and she was working on her vacation, which I was not happy about. So, we're scurrying a bit.
I totally understand and appreciate it. Just thinking.
No,
about
I know. So this isn't as perfect as I would have liked to have had it, but I think it's a very credible start.
Oh yeah, and it's just food for thought. I mean,
No,
this is very much appreciated that you guys were able to plug away.
Yeah.
So what I'd like to do before we, I did a couple things. One was I'd like to show you how how we have to be looking at debt service coverage, and then just where the bottom line is coming in. So the bottom line, when you get through all these expenses, admittedly with some shared concerns that we all have, I think, about surprises that might hit us in the expense line item, and hopefully some positive surprises on the revenue side, we are ending up with a $250,000 surplus. Now, at the finance committee, we had kind of instructed Shanika that we would like to have at least a 1.5% of annual revenue positive bottom line that would then be an addition to our cash to be used for unanticipated items or crises or whatever. We have to be careful. So we've definitely met that because that's the 1.5% of revenue is only $105,000. So we met that, and we have even more. The thing we have to keep an eye on as we say, okay, we don't need to run this big of a surplus, is we have to keep an eye on, are we preserving our debt coverage ratio? And the trick with the debt coverage ratio is that it is actually calculated at the end of each fiscal year. And then there is a checkpoint in January, February, I believe, using 6 months data. And we have to submit it to DAC, like we submit monthly financial reports and or quarterly financial reports and monthly construction reports and stuff. And so what I built here at the bottom is the calculation for how we would, approximately how we would be able to test this compliance with this as the year passes. So basically what we're required to have is 1.1. We have to have a debt service coverage ratio of 1.1. So that means we have to, with debt service spending of $1,027,000, we have to have a modified accrual surplus of 1.130, which is 1.1 times 1027. Make sense?
Yep.
So where we are today on this budget, which is essentially a cash-based budget, is we have the $259,000 surplus. Then we have to make some adjustments to kind of convert these numbers to a modified accrual. So the first thing we would do is we would say, okay, we've got $261,000 of asset purchases in there, which is new building equipment. It's some of the furniture order that we were expecting to use some of those bond reimbursements from the bonds that we got at closing. So we have $261,000 in there for that purchase, but we have a revenue offset of $261,000. So those two essentially net out. We would add back the expense and take out the revenue, net zero. Hopefully, very little of that will happen in the future. This is kind of a function of having being so early in our bond financing as we're trying to prepare a budget. Then we would add back the actual debt payments to UMB that are included in that budget. So when you add back the 259, you add back the actual debt service. We have funds available for debt service of 1.287, which gives us a coverage ratio of 1.25, which is A-okay. Make sense? Questions, comments?
Makes sense.
So I think I kind of listed out very quickly next steps. This budget would be perfectly fine for the state, and we could, if we want to tonight, approve it and submit it to DPI, and we would have to work it into the proper format for both DPI and DAC, but we could submit it to DAC and there would not be questions from investors. Since we have a fairly new set of numbers here, and we do have some concerns about not having enough cushion, maybe is a fair way to say it, or not having enough little squirreled away pockets of opportunity. We could ask Shanika to refine and clarify some things and probably still have an acceptable debt service ratio here. So it's really up to us whether we want to approve it tonight or whether we want her to do some tweaking and possibly bring it back at the next meeting. I won't be at the next meeting, but she is very capable of doing this without me. Then I think we need to look at how we can add to our monthly financial report the calculation that I laid out here so that we can on a month-to-month basis see that we're staying in compliance with the coverage ratio. And what I would say on that is, I don't think we should ever panic if we drop slightly, if we're out of compliance for a month here or there, because we know that our spend patterns are not super consistent. But if we see a trajectory, or we see we're out of compliance and we are not sure how we can reasonably expect a resolution in a month or two, then we need to be taking action. So I would view this as an early warning tool.
Okay.
And then work with the auditors on this whole lease accounting thing, so that as we understand exactly what that will do to our financials, we may have to add some more conversion amounts, more adjustments to the cash basis here to be able to properly predict debt service coverage. So would you guys prefer to have Shanika work on this a little more before we vote on it? Or do you want to, how do you want to go forward?
I would feel better just having another
Okay.
conversation about it.
Yep.
I agree.
Okay. No, I think that's very reasonable.
I was trying to look, do we have another, is there another finance meeting before the next board meeting, or?
Well, I canceled it because I'm out of town on the road from the 6th to the 18th now.
Gotcha. So it's fine. That's fine.
No, we could still do, I'm just thinking, I mean, the 18th is really only halfway through the month, right? So
that's what I'm saying. It's fine, because there aren't that many things. I think if we could just talk through them, and you'll be able to run through the notes with Shanika when she returns. So I'm fine with that. The 16th is perfectly fine, just our regular meeting.
When
I'm not
Shanika,
available.
she won't be.
So
Yeah.
we'll need to, if we could push it, the 23rd is the board meeting, right?
16th, I think.
16th.
Is the board meeting. Yeah. So I'm out of pocket that day.
But would you be comfortable, like, if you?
But I don't mind working with Shanika offline, and, going back and forth with her, and then letting her present revisions to the board.
If you would feel comfortable with that, that it would be at a point where you would be comfortable, even not being able to attend.
Yes.
I'm fine with that also.
I think we can do that. What I'll do is I will summarize the areas where there was questions and comments, and kind of ask her to revisit those, and be prepared to explain, to kind of explain some of her logic in areas where I didn't do it justice. And then let you guys review it one more time at the board meeting. And if she wants to she may want to have a walkthrough with one of you, or bounce questions off of one of you, just to make sure she's meeting your needs. But I will have my computer with me, and I can trade emails with her in the evenings, and things like that very easily. So I think we can make a lot of progress without me being at the meeting.
Okay. I appreciate all the progress so far. So
I think we all feel better now that we know, now that we clarified a few things about the coverage ratio and how it could be, and how we need to think about it. So, and how the lease impact, how we can leave out that second 6 months of leases.
Yeah.
Lease spend. That was the real killer.
Okay.
All right. Okay, well then that's kind of where we are, and I do appreciate all the feedback, and I will get I will get this all communicated to Shanika so she can pick it up and run with it going forward.
All right, thank you, Alice.
Certainly.
So the next item, end of lease, I wasn't sure if we would need that agenda item, just kind of on running through the budget, but you've actually incorporated those comments already. I think we have some more, just a couple of loose ends, if you will. And I know we've got a meeting upcoming with Trademark where we need to fine tune that.
And that is happening Monday, right?
Yes.
Cool.
So I will ask that we just table this and come back to it once the board has the information it needs to discuss what the end of lease will actually look like. Is that okay with you all?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. The admin leadership contract, kind of similar. Those things were also as we went through the budget. So I thought we were at a point where we could approve the template so that we can use that going forward. But having received a couple of comments from Donna, there's nothing else material. It simply just comes down to that question about insurance whenever we want to use an independent contractor contract, because she views that as differently than, for example, the contracted services that we use for EC and speech and things like that.
Right. Okay.
So since it's not quite the same, we're going to have to revisit the terminology and the requirements for insurance, and then we'll be able to come back and vote on that at our next meeting. So I'm going to table that as well. That brings us to the end of our business, since we've already had the that great update from Media Integrations. And I don't believe there's anything else. So having no further business to conduct, it is 7:30. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So
Second, Monica.
All in favor? Aye, Monique.
hi,
Hi,
Alice.
Monica.
Any opposed? Wonderful. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you
Thank you
all
all.
for joining us.